no other movement than the Kar Seva had been so successful in Bharat or
Yeah.
so emotionally connected to the whole Bharat in large. Arvind Kejriwal is my Masiha. Akbar didn't found a Mughal empire and he hated Mughals. Mughal is a upabranch or say corrupted form of
Huh.
Mongol. Prophet of communism, who happens to be Karl Marx, he really hated India.
It wasn't actually Khilji that had destroyed Nalanda, it was Hindu fanatics that had gone and destroyed Nalanda.
Dr. Ambedkar also wrote that Islam is the factor which ended the influence of Buddhism in Hindustan.
Car Sevaks are villains.
Genghis Khan is very secular. He's a secular killer. He kills just everybody. Babur has actually, he writes it that it's during the first marriage where I'm unattracted to my wife. But at the same time, he's saying that I found a boy, young lad called Babri, and I'm maddened in love of him. These are the same people who will raise question on the character of Sri Ram.
All right. So I am joined today by Abhas, and I'm very excited about this particular chat because I was telling you offline, Abhas, that I was watching your podcast with Kushal on the Charvaka podcast, and it was very interesting to me personally. It was very interesting. It was very eye opening, and we'll talk about your current book about Babur. I want to talk about that in a second. But I want to start with you because you have a very interesting personal history as well. I suppose a sort of like a cultural history on your own end. Because I remember you saying on Twitter, that you used to be a pretty committed Marxist or a pretty committed leftist at some point, and over the years, you've come to change your mind. But I want to start with the beginning. Like, what drew you to Marxism, leftism in the first place? Was it just family? Was it school? What was it?
First of all, greetings to everybody who is watching the show, and thank you, Sham, for having me on your show. It's indeed a pleasure. And of course, Kushal also had said me that you just need to be at his show too, because this is a place where you will get to discuss very freewillingly about the subject.
Yeah.
So here I am, and finally we are chatting about the
Yes, I'm
subject.
glad. I'm very happy
Yeah,
that we've been trying to connect over a week, but something or the other
yeah.
happened. So I'm very happy we're finally able to do this.
Thanks. Yeah, it's happening. So, yeah, this is quite pertinent in my life too. When I say myself to an ex-Marxist, I'm pretty serious about it because, of course, I was a Marxist by thought process. Certainly not very political Marxist per se,
Hmm.
because at very young age you don't get indulged into the politics unless you really have this aspiration that someday somebody from CPI will come and pick me and take me there.
Right.
So I never had such aspiration, but this is it with our system in general, the index system. When I say index system, it's all of them. It's all included, whether it's Sanatan Parampara or later the changed forms like say Buddhism, say Jainism, etc., etc. Every system is very open to a large extent because it doesn't subscribe to a man and a book, and because it doesn't subscribe to man and a book, it at times gives you liberty to explore into a lot of things, and people are at many times not carrying the load of the traditions in many of the cases.
Yeah.
My family happens to be one of it's a very quite a progressive family, believes in education. Education is a key. My father happens to be a historian,
Oh,
so
so it runs in the
I
family.
yeah, somewhere I can say that
The
because
love for history
it's,
runs in the family.
yeah, it was the childhood anecdotes which I heard from him. Uh, because I come from a very small town,
Hmm.
Hazaribagh in Jharkhand, and in small
Oh,
towns you
ho, so
observe.
you're my neighbor. I'm from Bihta Zilla in Patna. Is my where my
Oh,
ancestral village
okay.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, my mother is from Patna.
Arey, wow, there you go. Look at that. Small world.
Yeah, small world indeed. So, in the small cities or towns, you would see that the students who can't make it to the college in the morning because of their other commitments,
Hmm.
their someone would be doing something else. So, they would come into the evening to the teacher's place or professor's place to get extra classes. So, that was the
Hmm.
case in in case with my father too. The students would come up and I would hear those stories. And I heard those stories, certainly academic history is what can take you further from the traditional idea, and especially when it's about the medieval Indian history or early modern Indian history. My father
Yeah.
is expert of medieval Indian history. And with the time, I began to drift away from the traditional values. I always began to question the thing that what's the point of indulging in a puja parampara, or what's the point of really worshipping idol and all those kind
Wow.
of things.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And the moment you begin to question the idol worship, at times it will take you to the path which can be very vulnerable to your whole cultural system too. It
Hmm.
can be
Hmm.
the cultural system which you carry as your legacy, or rather I would say that which you carry in the legacy, can just start blurring. It will just happen that you will feel that everything was a fallacy. And if you are rationalist, and if you feel to be on the side of the science,
Uh,
all these things will look like they were some sort of nonsense fed to you. It happened with me, and I went to study architecture. And architecture school is a place where you are led to explore into freedom of expression, because after all you have to create something which doesn't exist.
hmm.
You have
Hmm.
to imagine, out of the boxes. And so be it in the education of architecture that you read the art movements. That's a part of curriculum. You will read about modernism, you will read about the postmodernism, you will read the Derrida, you will read the
Right.
deconstructivism. Yeah.
That's how I didn't
So
realize you had to read like Derrida and stuff for an architecture course. That's interesting.
yeah, we have to, because
Acha.
we have a subject called theory of design and history of architecture.
Okay.
So history of architecture and theory of design does covers these things. And if you are interested in history and literature, you
Yeah.
will begin to shift to the Marxism too. Um, I read all the works of Karl Marx, and I was just addicted to his writings, and it felt that if I follow that path somewhere, I can
Hmm.
bring the revolution. And it does happen that when you are 19, 20, 21, you feel that मैं तो क्रांतिकारी मैं ही
Yeah, you're
क्रांतिकारी हूँ
very
मैं
idealistic. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
मैं तो बदल दूंगा. And I felt that all the systems
Sada
are
Hak
bogus.
Etherak, your favorite movie is like Rockstar and shit
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
So it did happen with me, and I was a committed Marxist by the idea, not as a not as a political value system, but certainly as a person who believed that the Marxist idea can change the whole thing.
Hmm.
And it was around 2012 when everybody plunged into this anti-corruption movement.
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
Anna movement was picking up, then I felt that Arvind Kejriwal is my masiha, and somewhere, yeah, he can. I saw him as a man who can be that leader who can bring back the baton of socialism,
Right.
and that was my perspective. And
Right.
of course, Congress was seen as a corrupt party.
Right.
Then BJP was a Hindutva party to me, which espouses for communalism. So,
Right.
and I hate my tradition. So, how can I side by it? So, suddenly, this Aam Aadmi party looked like a path which is somewhere close to Marxism. This is what I felt, and
Sure.
I got trapped into it. But yeah, the transformation came because of an incident, and it did happen for good.
So I want to talk about that also, but did you ever notice one of the things that I find very interesting about Indian Marxism, and maybe I'm wrong, so being an ex-Marxist, you can probably correct me. But what I've noticed about Indian Marxism particularly is that if you look at Marxism sort of or communist ideologies around the rest of the world, they tend to be like almost aggressively patriotic. In China, in Russia, in all these countries, it's like aggressively patriotic. Everything for the motherland, love my motherland, will die for my motherland. But in Indian Marxism is very different. In Indian Marxism almost kind of hates India.
Yeah, that's so true. Because if we look at China, Mao began it with a nationalistic movement.
Huh.
It was to combine the farmers to fight against the imperialism. That's where it began. And interestingly, Marx never exposed communism to the people till, say, another 2 decades or so. Communism began
Oh,
to be
interesting.
exposed very late. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it grew with the fodder of nationalism. So
Yeah, exactly.
nationalism, yeah, nationalism built the foundation for the communism in China. Otherwise, it may not have become popular. And it's very
Huh.
interesting. So it happens with Russia. But Russian communism initially was a bit global, and that's
Hmm.
where the Chinese and the Russian were a bit different to some
Okay.
extent. And maybe that was the reason where the Russians and the Chinese began to drift apart. There was a not much of agreement between what Mao was thinking, and that's why the Mao thought came into being, or what we know as Maoism. But in India, it was all about, because the our Masiha, or the prophet of communism, who happens to be Karl Marx, the
Yeah.
man, and the book, of course, the Das Kapital. He really hated India to a large extent, and in fact he was in
Interesting.
favor of British colonialism. He said
Right.
that Britishers have two duties to fulfill. One is certainly to modernize the Asiatic world,
Huh.
and then bash the Asiatic superstition. So in fact, you look at the hypocrisy, right? Marx is supposed to be anti-capitalist. He's supporting the colonialist, the capitalist, just
Yeah.
for his hate for India, or just for the say hate for the East.
Right.
So Marxism necessarily was always anti-East. That's what how I look at it as. So if you are trying to be in the shoes of a Marxism, how
Yeah.
can you not follow the Prophet Marx? So that becomes a very essential trait, because Marxism cannot be regional. It's a global movement. You can never have an Indian version of Marxism, because Indian system is so diverse that you can fit in the liberal ideas, you can fit it so many ideas so easily into the Indic thought processes. You
Yeah.
just don't need a Western idea. What may be liberal in a certain region, that may be very anti-liberal in a certain region of India. Such is the diversity of Indian land.
Right.
So this unified idea somehow can't really work in Indian system. So, but they have to follow the Karl Marx's idea or the Lenin's idea. So they have always been anti-India for that reason.
So, you've written very extensively, obviously, about, what changed in your own mind, in your own heart when it comes to sort of Hindutva, Marxism. So, what was there any, for you, was there a specific event, or was this something more of a gradual thing, sort of death by a thousand cuts kind of a thing that your mind changed?
No, it was one incident or event
Okay.
actually, and so it was a study trip where I had taken the students. I was working as a research assistant in a college, and I was taking the lectures for design. And I happened to take the student in a study trip to Aurangabad, now Shambhaji Nagar, where
Yeah.
Ajanta Caves sits. When I walked into the Ajanta caves, I was thrilled to see the paintings for sure. And of course, before that, we had been to the Ellora caves. And when I looked at the Kailasha temple, I was like, wow, because I had always drawn the sketches of Ellora caves for 10 petty marks in history of architecture. But
Right.
yeah, but that day, I could feel the grandeur of it, that what it means to build something like Kailasha. But
Hmm.
still, it was not something which would drift me away from the idea. When I walked into the Ajanta caves, and inside the caves, the place is very dark, like
Okay.
because you don't have any light inside, right? So, and they are very elaborative painting even inside the caves. So I kept wondering that what it is that they were able to make those elaborate paintings, because to make the detailed paintings you need light, and the source of color was organic colors,
Okay.
right? That's in that era you could only extract colors out of plants and other organic sources, and the source of light was only fire or the sunlight, and sunlight can't reach there directly. So if you will use fire, and if it exposed in front of the organic colors will start forming carbon fragments,
Oh,
because
okay.
organic component, when they react with the fire, with the heat, the carbon is formed.
Right.
So necessarily they won't have used that. I was quite curious to understand it, how this painting were made. What I saw in the cave was that moment you enter inside the cave, there are large ditches. Ditches, as
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
you get inside and then you step down, like how you see the old courtyards in the houses, you step down, right? So it's like a courtyard kind of system, and so I was quite surprised at what
Hmm.
exactly
Hmm.
this courtyard is doing there, or rather the ditch or the depression. So I asked the guide, he couldn't answer me. And so in the evening, we were supposed
Hmm.
to meet a expert architect and the professor of that region, Professor Deshpande. I put this question to him, and then he explained me that, those
Huh.
ditches were made to do the painting. I like, well, what do you mean by this? So they said that,
Okay.
this cave faces south, and it's in a horseshoe shape, as in U shape, and this U faces the south. And from south, at a certain time, the light of sun rays are in a particular direction. So these guys, the monks, whom I thought to be the superstitious
Right.
bunch of people, the idiots and stupid one, they stored water there, and they use a so-called snail slough with some reflective material further to amplify it, and they
Hmm.
got
Oh wow.
light inside the cave by so-called snail's law of reflection. And when I
Huh.
and he showed me it to me. He had a cross section, wooden
Wow.
model kept inside the house. He showed me through the torch, kept the water, and that is how it used to work. And I was like,
Right.
wow, the guys whom I thought to be the most superstitious bunch of people who are, always doing reciting the mantras, and they have nothing. Where mantras also don't have any meaning. That's what I thought. They were just so
Right.
miraculous people. They were using a so-called snail's law 1500 years back. And that made me, I still get the goosebumps when I imagine that what was happening that day. And when I that led me to read a
Right.
bit of Buddhist literature to start with, because I was quite excited to know about those paintings and Buddhist literature, to a bit of Upanishads. And when you're
Right.
picking up on a bit of religious studies, history just comes in. And so the whole perspective began to change. The way I was looking at India was much more different, and it was a completely a refreshing look. But even when I was communist, I was a determined patriotic person too, because every 15th August or 26th January, I would go into, we had a large campus of in the house. We would go out there. I'd go out there in the ground 5 a.m. in the morning to dig the place where I have to do the pole, where I have to do the flag hosting. And
Right.
so this was there. But I felt that perhaps Marxism is the way good for my country.
And it's understandable, particularly when there's such an income disparity in the country. There's so much of the country that lives under poverty, and you see kind of things like caste discrimination out in society as well. It's understandable that a young idealistic person will drift towards the ideology where like is desh ka kuch nahi ho sakta. The only way to change the country is to bring about a revolution, get rid of the old guard and install a new guard in its place, and you know drive the country towards that sort of equitable utopia, whatever it might be. What I personally, in my personal opinion, I feel like those issues are getting addressed in a very large way by Hindutva today. Whether it's fighting caste discrimination, whether it's providing representation to communities that didn't have representation in the Indian mainstream earlier. What I know you said that you initially started sort of reading about Buddhist things and stuff like that. What was your journey towards sort of associating yourself with Hindutva? Like when did that come about?
Yeah, it's very interesting because when you first hear the term Hindutva, especially say a guy who has had the PCM background, physics, chemistry, mathematics, and then aspiring to do something related to the science, and then you come across the idea of Hindutva, where, of course, as you spoke about the issues which are in conflict with your ideologies or the idealistic set of mind frame which you have,
Hmm.
then you just feel that perhaps this any idea which is related to Hindu is gonna be a problematic one.
Yeah.
And for that period, the idea of Hindutva to me only was the image. What always kept creeping into my mind was the destruction of Babri. Yeah, and I was 4 year old when this incident had happened, and it does happen that when you're 4, 5, 6, especially in the era when the smartphones are not taken over. So it was incidences around, and
Yeah.
especially what your uncles and everyone spoke, that really got embedded in your mind for very long. So somewhere I always had this imagery that something wrong had happened,
Hmm.
and at the same time, Hazaribagh is very religiously volatile place, and in every Ramnavami something would happen that
Yeah.
right now people would have seen that of Hanuman Dhwaj of
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
last size and all. But Hazaribagh is known for having competitions of who can have the largest of the Hanuman Dhwaj, say 50 feet, 40 feet in during the Ramnavamis. And whenever these processions will walk out, some very unpleasant incidents would happen. Something would happen. And every Ramnavami, it was a ban to come out of the house because
Wow.
you fear that something is going to happen. And
It's the same
at
way in
that,
around Phulwari Sharif near Patna. It's the same way. Yeah.
yeah, Fulwari Sharif
Yeah.
too experiences the same thing.
Yeah.
So what this does is that the fear of those communal disruptions, or the fear of the riots taking place, and in everything you always feel that perhaps my community is something which is to be blamed, because you always try to act holier than thou, and you always feel that, if I can blame my own community, then the problem is sorted. That, I am the woke, because the woke idea is not a new phenomenon. Everyone, we all wanted to be a woken one
Dude, I'll
in
tell you,
some
in
way.
my college, Abhas, I went to
Yeah,
Delhi University. I was in Hindu college. And not just from my college, but from that entire campus, I would speak to a lot of people. I had a lot of friends, acquaintances across the campuses. And for them, when you spoke about Hindutva, it was the guy. Have you ever seen the movie Rang De Basanti?
yeah,
Rang De Basanti, mein, you remember the Hindutva guy? For
yeah,
everybody,
yeah,
when this you said Hindutva, it was that guy. Arey, wo, the Hindutva means that guy. In my
yeah,
college, I remember like around 2008, 2009, 2010, it was just that guy. That guy meant Hindutva. And it that movie is such an incredibly brilliant piece of sort of propaganda. I mean, you have to give it
yeah.
credit because it had a lot of people fooled for a very long time.
True.
Yeah. So
So yeah,
you started having this, you started having this shift, and I want to talk about history a little bit as well, because that's what your primarily love is for. And Indian history coverage is pretty wild in India. You've talked about it yourself. You've written a whole book about it. But I remember there was a thread that you shared. I think it was in response to an article by the Caravan, which, if I'm not wrong, they had said that it wasn't actually Khilji that had destroyed Nalanda. It was Hindu fanatics that had gone and destroyed Nalanda.
yeah,
I had
yeah.
never heard this in my life. And then I saw your thread and I'm like, ye chal kya raha hai idhar?
No, so true. And the whole, and see, even I was convinced with a lot of ideas back then, which are still propagating, because these are old ideas propagated by the people like D.N. Jhas and etc.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So my own reading of Hindutva had changed me to a great large extent. And while I was reading about Hindutva, I did come across a lot of literature of Savarkar. And Savarkar had given a lot of clues about everything. And so we can keep on fighting around the idea that whether Savarkar was a good friend of Ambedkar or not till the cows reach home. But maybe
Right.
that this battle will never end. But there was a point that when Ambedkar chose to convert to Buddhism, Savarkar did right, and he did express his disappointment. But at the same time, he was happy that at least he has converted to Buddhism and he didn't shift anywhere else.
Yeah.
So, and then the literature with Dr. Ambedkar also produced, while the problem is that in Indian system, you just the heroes exist, and there's so many heroes, and you just and every character is so gray, but the moment you try to prick black or white of it, it just
Right.
becomes a different kind of issue.
Yeah.
But a lot of literature which Dr. Ambedkar also produced did show to some extent that but the Indian history is all about the conflict between Hinduism and Buddhism.
Right.
But at the same time, people forgot that Dr. Ambedkar also wrote that Islam is the factor which ended the influence of Buddhism in Hindustan
Yeah.
or Bharat. He did write it very categorically and very clearly. And he saw the fall of Nalanda as one of the essential factor as the fall of Buddhism,
Wow.
and in that, he mentioned about Khilji doing it. So he is quite convinced. And so, for a moment, if you believe, as you want to believe, that Ambedkar happens to be a Hindu basher, let's take
Sure.
it. So Hindu basher is telling this to you for a while, that fall of Islam, fall of Buddhism happened because of Islamic invasion, and Nalanda was the benchmark for everything what would have happened. So now the people like DNJ, he's no more among us, but still the people who are propagating those ideas of Caravan, the guy who happens to be the editor of it, sees Ambedkar in a very esteemed light.
Yeah.
So what happens here then? Now, coming back to the historical facts around it, the the facts are so twisted that recently also we have got a new historian popped up from JNU who does talk about this thing about the Bakhtiyar Khilji not actually destroying Nalanda.
Right.
Yeah, she makes a claim, as did Audrey Troshke made long back, and so did the other historians in the league, that because Bakhtiyar Khilji's name is not mentioned, so we can't believe. But you know what's very interesting, that Audrey Troshke happens to be more honest than this new JNU historian. I
Okay.
read the whole paper, which Audrey Troshke had. So it was
Yeah, what a
in one
brave
of a
man. You
panel,
read an entire paper by Audrey Tushke.
because it
It
was
shows your
important.
commitment to the cause.
Yeah.
That's you're a real
So
committed person.
So it's did happen that Vikram Sampath had just quoted Will Durant
Uh,
and spoken about, and also he has spoken about how Nalanda and Bakhtiyar, how Nalanda was destroyed, and how all these things he mentioned in one of the panel discussion, in which I was also one of the panelists. And after that, whole cabal got activated, that what this man is saying. They were targeting KS Lal because he had also quoted KS Lal in that day, on that day, that 80 million.
right.
Now, I'll address this KS Lal issue as well, and I'll address Nalanda too. So KS Lal issue, KS Lal clearly say it is an estimate. Estimate can be right or wrong. Okay. But he based his estimate on certain primary sources,
Okay.
certain texts, certain instances of that period. That's where he came to a conclusion that from 1000 AD to 1580, we lost a population, not killed, we lost a population of 80 million, which included people taken as sex slaves, people um, killed, many people would have been taken other ways around, but we lost a population of around 80 million. So, the long back when it happened in 70s, refutation had come by Irfan Habib. That was not a refutation per se, that was more of a rhetoric. So K.S. Lal, being K.S. Lal, responded to a rhetoric as well, and he said that you blame me of selective quoting. How do you selectively quote when you find an instance that a Muslim ruler had done something for a temple, and then you generalize that during the Muslim rule, it was all the secularism which was flourishing?
Yeah.
You pick and choose, and now when I'm not actually picking and choosing, but I'm bringing more from, like, there are 100 incidences of that 98 are anti-Islamic rule. I'm choosing those 98, and then you are asking me that why you're not choosing two of them. Then he also took the case, saying that, okay, this is my estimate. I'm not saying that is correct. Mr. Habib can come with his own estimate. Now, we don't have case Lal among us. Irfan Habib is still alive, very much thriving, giving all kind of things in the public speeches and saying all kind of things. But still, the paper remains, the rebuttal of case Lal has not been counted.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been 5 decades, literally
Yeah.
almost 5 decades. Coming back to the Nalanda wala issue, there's a tale that they refer to a text called Ashok Vadna.
Okay.
Ashok Vadna actually makes a villain out of Ashoka too,
Hmm.
and then makes a villain out of Pushpamitra Sangha. And then if Pushpamitra Sangha is blamed for bringing down 84,000 stupas, and when you do a basic mathematics, it will tell you by how long he ruled. It will tell you that every day he was demolishing at least three or four stupas. Then only he could do it.
Right.
So mathematically, it's impossible. So sorry, for Nalanda they don't use Ashok Varna. For that they use a Tibetan text,
Okay.
and the Tibetan text says that two monks using their sadhana and use the diya or the other lamp to burn whole of the Nalanda.
Oh.
Okay, the whole of a Nalanda was burned by a diya. And coming back to, so that's like all those arguments with DN Jha has put across, they are very childish in nature and they just cannot be taken up. uh, like you just can't take it that a rational Marxist is saying that other lamp did burn. And me and Vikram had gone to Nalanda recently, and I could see within the bricks, the still you can see the marks of the burns, and that's so deep. It would tell you that there was a very big strategy, and I
Right.
don't know what materials, explosive materials, were used to make it happen. It was not so simple, and you could see the grains being stuck to the granaries in the
Wow.
granary walls, and etc. So it cannot be an act of earthen lamp for sure, or
Hmm.
sadhana being done by somebody. So Audrey Trusky is bit honest here. So
So
she says
that's
that
very interesting.
so
So,
she says that
go on.
Islamic texts are mostly exaggerated. I agree to it. There are
Hmm.
a lot of exaggeration in Islamic text. But if you say that Islamic text is exaggerated, by that logic, the whole history of Islam will go for a toss
Yeah.
because hadiths were written 200 years after the alleged supposed demise of Pagambar Muhammad.
Right.
Then she builds a case that story of Bakhtiyar Khilji was told by a guy who was in the campaign along with Bakhtiyar Khilji, but he told it after 40 years to the Minhas who
Hmm.
actually wrote the story. So the guy who's telling the story was actually the part of the campaign. He's claiming it and he's claiming it very clearly. But she puts a doubt that it happened only after 40 years. After 40 years, so we just can't take this text by the face value of that guy.
Sure.
But you are believing the history of Pagambar Muhammad, whose story was told 200 years after his
Right. His
supposed
demise.
demise.
Yeah.
Then, if when you take the maps also in place, where Takshila is placed, where Nalanda is placed, where Odantapuri is placed, and
Hmm.
Vikramshila, so you can't reach Nalanda, you can't reach to the other Odantapuri
Hmm.
without passing through Nalanda. So the text talks about Odantapuri, text talks about Vikramshila. So he would have certainly passed through. So all the logic really supports the point that Bakhtiyar Khilji had indeed done it.
Interesting. So coming to your book on Babur, Babur the Chessboard King. Firstly, why did you feel the need for a book to be written about Babur, for specifically Babur only, a Babur focused book? What was your idea behind it?
So, as I said, that of course Babri was embedded in my mind for very
Okay.
long, and if that was a reason to start hitting the Hindutva movement or say the Hindutva per se, so the moment I began to embrace back Hindutva and
Hmm.
the Ram Janmabhoomi movement was very important because I understood this as a fringe to start with because the Kurz Sevaks were villainous people to me.
Yeah.
I'm sure that maybe that this can be taken as snippet and people say that the Abbas calls.
Yeah.
But
Abbas
irrespective of
says
that,
car sevaks are villains. This is
yeah.
going to be the
So
tagline of the video.
yeah. So that's what I had seen them as. But the moment I began to read the High Court judgment, Allahabad High Court judgment, I was taken aback that what transpired there and how long we had been fighting for it and how Hindutva movement, in fact, I believe that perhaps no other movement than the Kar Seva had been so successful in Bharat or so
Yeah.
emotionally connected to the whole Bharat in large, north, south, east, west.
Yeah.
Nothing before. I do believe that perhaps the Gandhian movement was also not that powerful, not at all. So I felt that certainly I need to look into it for sure. And there was a period when all these debates were cooking up, say 5 years back, that Mughals ne to Bharat ko jyada rich bana diya.
Yes.
So yeah, there was a meme
Mughals
from
bought
India Today.
civilized India. They made India rich and
Yeah,
all of those wonderful
yeah,
things. Yeah.
all we got. Yeah, the
Yeah.
earth what is kept backside, it was also
It
brought by
was also
Babur
India.
Padman.
Biryani. If no Mughals, no
Yeah.
biryani, what will we do? Yeah.
So everything was done by them. And then India Today has circulated a meme that in the Mughal period, GDP share of India was 25%.
Hmm.
Right? And the source, Angus Madison. So I thought that it's good time to read Angus Madison to begin with. I read Angus Madison and I saw, okay, 15 read 80, it's 24.8, not even 25, 24.8. 1000 AD, it's 28% by the same source.
Right.
180 is 32%, and GDP share of India got drastically below China in the era of Akbar the Great for the first time.
Wow. Interesting.
So then, yeah, so then I thought that it's going interesting, and then I
Yeah.
looked at the other data that GDP per capita, because that actually tells you, like we keep on saying that India is becoming a great economy and all, but everything fine. But I always believe that unless we are able to match the GDP per capita, not in terms of PPP, etc., but
Yeah. Yeah.
it really is very significant thing. If we be very honest about it.
Sure.
So GDP per capita was a very important thing to look at, and I looked at the growth, GDP per capita growth rate. It was negative largely only in one period. And the second period was a British period, that also for a small era of say 30 years. But from 1500 to 1820, our GDP per capita growth rate was negative all throughout, -1. So imagine if the GDP share of Hindustan, and you say that Hindustan was largely Mughals because
Hmm.
they were ruling, they give you the big green map, right?
Right.
Which is again far from truth, but let's stick to what they give.
Sure.
Okay, so that's Hindustan, and if GDP share of this green map is 25%, and if the GDP per capita growth is negative,
Huh.
then this green map को जो govern कर रहा है, they are problematic people for the people, general
Yeah.
people, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I thought that go back to the source,
Hmm.
and source as in the man. The
Are
here
you
the
trying
source
to
is
say that the Mughals were not miraculous for the Indian economy?
not at all. And in fact, मतलब ये तो वही हिसाब हो गया, आप इतने अमीर हो, you are having say 20 CR in your bank account.
Yeah.
Okay, going to give you some 20,000 bucks. How about it?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so even they didn't even give 20,000 because our GDP share, and in fact, according to Irfan Habib,
Hmm.
Akbar was the largest hoarder of money among
Wow.
all. He hoarded money. Irfan Habib says this.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
and in fact, if you want to refute Irfan Habib, use his books.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, because if he's saying something in public, just take his book and
Yeah.
so. So Marxists did some amazing job to analyze the economic era because their history was based on that.
Interesting.
So, and then I began to look. Source for the empire was Babur. I began to read the translated version of Babur Nama, and what interested me the most was that the loot. As in, Babur was. See, we were told. Still, I was also believing now, despite being a Hindutva ideologue, that okay, Babur came and settled here. He didn't take the money out from here. He may have utilized on himself, but no, this guy was carrying money. He has given whole account of how much gold, silver he was carrying to Uzbekistan, giving
Wow.
to his beyks. He has given all account of it, right?
Wow.
So I thought that there's so much. So I began to give a bit of lectures because I was putting the tweets. So Sangam called me to give a lecture. I gave a lecture, and
Yeah.
then followed with two, three more lectures. Then MD Pai suggested Mohandas Pai that you should have a good PPT. So I didn't understand his strategy. So, but I made a PPT. Then he said that up to PPT ho gaya, now start working on book. So, and then it was like that. Okay, let's do each and every emperor. So the
Oh,
idea now
interesting.
is not to be concentrated only to Babur, and this book is also only half of the life of Babur, the foundational years. Following it, the sequel is going to talk about when he comes into Hindustan, and which many people will be more interested to read about for
Right.
obvious reason. And so the target is to finish 8 or 9 books, but right now here we have Babur the Chessboard King as a first in the series,
I was
and I
curious
did
about that. What's the inspiration behind that name, Chessboard King?
Oh, okay. So many people are finding this chessboard title to be somewhat to sing a glory to Babur,
Okay.
but that's not the case because again, if people play chess, they will know that what the strength of a chessboard king is. He's just nobody to start with
Hmm.
because he can just go in one house here, this one house there, right? Crisscross and straight, whatever, but the rear and forward.
Right.
But he depends on his people. It depends on the queen or wazir or rani or whatever we may like to call it. The different
Right.
reasons people call it different names. It depends on pawns. It depends on its elephants. Every other thing. But the chessboard king is not that powerful. And the history of Babur also is as such that he wins a territory, gets to know that some other territory which was actually with him earlier is gonna be attacked. He
Hmm.
moves that side, loses the other one. He reaches the other place, he loses the other one, and
Uh,
so on and on. And one of his enemies, Shaibani Khan, is always following him. Babur comes at X, Khan comes at X. Babur moves to Y, he comes there. So Tom and Jerry game
right.
keeps on going on. So Farishta, the Muslim historian, had called Babur a chessboard king.
Huh.
बेसिकली जिसकी कोई औकात उस तरह से नहीं है बट राजा है तो राजा है
राजा है तो राजा है.
दैट्स द होल थिंग सो Actually,
It's
this
interesting
sums up
because
the character of Babur.
he's a very revered figure, obviously, among Muslims as the founder of the Mughal dynasty. He's seen as a very revered figure. Even today, people obviously in Pakistan name their, even in India, name their children after Babur. Very inspirational figure, very popular figure among the Muslim community. What you have found some things in the book about this gentleman that really does put into question many of those qualities that people associate with Babur. People associate Babur, like you said, as like this great conqueror and this great statesman and this great king who brought all of India to its knees and things like that. But it's funny because when you were talking to Kushal on the podcast, one thing Kushal kept saying was Babar the Bevda, over and over again. And
Yeah.
so talk to me about some of the things that you actually found. And just to be clear, you went and read all the primary sources. Like aisa nahi hai ki you found some very obscure source and found these
Yeah.
things. You're finding these things from like primary sources that is available to the world.
Yeah. So, just to make even clear more to the audience that I began working with the translated version, but when I found that there are discrepancies among the translated version, I choose to learn Persian.
Oh wow.
I did learn Persian to read the text. I can decode the text and the manuscript. So I accessed the original manuscript of Babur
How
Nama.
long did that take you to learn Persian?
So it was a 1.5 year
Okay.
journey, and this book altogether was a 4 year project. So I cannot speak in Farsi, but
Okay.
I can read the manuscripts of 16th century. That
Interesting.
how they, and I
So who
could
was
do it.
Babar? Babarnama was written because Babar was an Uzbek.
Yeah.
They speak, they have their own language. Who wrote Babarnama?
So Babur wrote the Babur Nama in a language called Chaktai Turkic, which is archaic now.
Right.
So
Okay.
it is not equal to the Turkic language or Turki language as we know. So it was Chagatai Turkic, which was mix of the Mongolide and those sort of language.
Uzbek sort of, yeah.
And later on, Akbar got that text translated into Persian.
Okay, I see.
So the text which I used and which is with us, and because the fragments of the Chagatai Turkic text is lost, and so we have the Persian manuscript. So the for my book, I had to use around 400 folios in the first one, and
Okay.
though more folios are there, so 400 was a number for me. And so again, because there was contradiction, so it was important to really check that what the original sources talk about.
Huh.
And majorly the contradiction was in term of uh, calling kafir, generalizing them as a pagan, and all those kind of things, which generally the agenda makers do.
Yeah.
So I I could get a clarity on this through the original source. Now, again, to clarify to the people right away, because we have been speaking about the Mughal Empire. I know many people will say that what this guy is saying, that perhaps Babur is not Bevda, he is Bevda, because I would say that Babur didn't found a Mughal empire.
Acha.
The empire which he had founded was called Timurid Gurkhania. And
Oh.
yeah, there is no mention of Mughal empire anywhere, and he hated Mughals.
Who
So
were the Mughals in Babur's time? Like who was the people that he hated? Who were the Mughals?
yes. So Mughals are the people who are Mongols and who are following the Mongol culture. And so
Okay.
Mongol, many people do have a notion that Mongol and Mughal are not equal or equivalent, but they're equivalent. Mughal is a upbranch or say corrupted form of
Huh.
Mongol. So
Oh.
Babur's mother was from the side of Genghis Khan. Father's side is from Taimur's side, and Taimur and Genghis happen to have a common ancestor who is Mongol. This
Okay.
Tumane Khan is the name of that ancestor. Genghis Khan comes in fifth generation. Taimur comes in tenth generation. Mongols initially are not Muslims, and
Hmm.
so just to clarify to people, the Khan is not a Muslim surname.
Right.
It's a regional surname.
Right.
And so, yeah, it is a Mongol surname. The chieftain of the Mongols was called the Khan.
Even today, I feel like they have that name in Mongolia, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's quite common. So that's why the Khan cannot be associated with Islam nor with it's a regional surname. People
Hmm.
may like or dislike this what I say, but that's the truth is as it is. It's a
Right.
regional surname. So, Genghis Khan is very secular. He's a secular killer. He kills just everybody.
Equal opportunity
So,
murderer.
yeah, he is
Yeah.
like that. And he is very careful for his subjects. He take care of his subjects. And in his territory, you can practice any religion. There is no just only two restrictions was there on Muslim, that you can't do halal slaughter and you can't follow Sharia.
Oh,
The rest all is fine.
interesting.
And yeah, and people will know Genghis Khan to be somebody, and I will come to that Babur's part,
Huh,
but I
huh.
just clarify this because this
Yeah,
is quite
yeah.
interesting one bit. So Genghis Khan is known as a persecutor of the Muslims in general. Like he killed a lot of Muslims, but interestingly, the certain bunch of Muslim gave him a title of the defender of religion because he had protected them
Okay.
as well. So he was very secular per se, but because of course secular definition is because secularism actually means the wall between church and the state.
Right.
But as we try to see it in India, equal equality. What it
Right.
doesn't mean, but anything there is no such definition. So
Yeah.
okay, let's take the Indian definition of secularism that
Sure.
everybody is. Yeah, so he was secular that way. The state was very secular, but Taimur is a guy who is religiously very fanatic. And by the time Taimur has come into being, the Mongols have also converted to Islam. And there was a civil war between Helegu Khan, who is the grandson of Changiz, and the other grandson, who is Barke Khan.
Okay.
This civil war is because Barke Khan has got converted into Islam by a Sufi, and Helegu Khan is going on to ravish the Islamic world. He has sacked Baghdad and he is going ahead, and Islamic empire is gonna end as it is going because, uh, like, Baghdad is the center of Islam that in that period.
Yeah.
That's the golden era where everything is happening. House of Baghdad and all. The Khalifa is killed. So Barke Khan is very angry, and he takes a war against Mongol brother. In general, Mongols never crossed swords against each other.
Okay.
For the first time, this intense war happened against the true brothers, and Helegu Khan got defeated and later on dies because of illness. So, had Helegu Khan won the battle, scenario would have been much different because, uh, again, not against anybody or anything, but the history that says that Islamic influence would have ceased to exist
Wow.
had that war given the difference. And then the Mongol Empire has got converted to Islam. And this side, later on, Timur is also a fanatic Islamic guy. And he has two aspirations. One is to become Khalifa, which he can't become because he doesn't come from a family. Second aspiration is to become the Khan, which also he can't become because he doesn't come from lineage of Genghis Khan.
Right.
Okay. So to solve this problem, what it does, it propagates a mythology that I have been ordained by Allah, that I
Ah.
am gonna be a prophet kind of a person. And it happened in the Middle Ages that if you propagate a story, people will believe in it, right? It happened everywhere. India, it happened
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
Like
If
stories
you
propagated
say it
by,
long enough, it'll become the truth.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a phenomenon. It's not just the Nazi propaganda, but it's a very old propaganda.
Yeah, yeah.
So he does it, and secondly, he marries into the house of Genghis Khan, and there's a power vacuum, so he puts a puppet into the house as a ruler, and it himself takes the title of Amir. So he's called Amir Taimur,
Okay.
and is known as Gurkhania. Gurkhania is son-in-law in the Mongol language,
Okay.
and then he establishes an empire which is called Taimuria Gurkhania. And Babur later on establishes an empire which is called Taimuria Gurkhania 2.0 is what we can call it because it is
Okay.
established in Hindustan. And Mongols are the people who are from the side of Genghis Khan or who are living in Mughalistan is a different reason. And he hates the Mughals. So in Babar Nama, he abuses Mughals like wherever the Mughals thrive, there's
Really?
unrest. Yeah, and he's abusing Mughals like anything. And you are calling him that he established the Mughal
So how
Empire.
did that name, वो नाम कैसे पड़ गया उनका मुगल्स?
So it was because of a reason that there was a period when the West was looking upon Genghis Khan, the Mongols, in great light. Because the guru of Voltaire, if we say the Dr. Locke or Locke, based on the pronunciation, what people are doing it,
Yeah.
Locke. So he was compared with Genghis Khan by a guy like Gibbon, who wrote the
Hmm.
Roman history and a very famous historian, is a English guy. So Genghis Khan was being compared with a philosopher of an Enlightenment era
Right.
because he was secular, he was expansionist, and what these Europeans were doing, most of the there were two sector of Europeans. One was a Catholic, which was very fanatic in the sense that they will do the religious conversion, and
Yeah.
there was one section with the Protestant. The way the Britain or the England got into India later on tried to be as secular as possible. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of discussions also in the their own parliament and etc. That this the conversion is not being led to happen and all
Yeah.
so yeah, so they had a very different kind of agenda. So somehow people saw the Genghis Khan model to be a very idealistic one, and Mughals were seen in a great light, but the Timurid idea was seen in a bad light because this was religiously very fanatic,
Hmm.
and it
Hmm.
was being seen. And Europeans recognized people from the culture, race, not by culture.
Yeah.
So though Timur is also Mongol, he recognized himself as a Persian. He was aligned more toward the Persian. So that's why later on, also in the empire of Babur and so on and on, the language, code language is Persian. So they are from Mongolia or say Mongol. What do they have to do with the Persian language, right? But they use the Persian language because
Right.
of this reason. So that's when the Europeans begin to write the book about these guys. Like Thomas Roe had got in interaction with Jahangir when that's how the British come into Indian territory. The route
Right.
was again laid by the Timurids or the Mughals. So they began to address them as Mongols or the Mughals,
Oh.
and we appropriated the same thing what the we didn't care to go back to the primary source, but we
Yeah.
just carried forward from there. So that's how they came to be known as something which they never called themselves as.
That's incredible. So
Yeah.
none of Babur, Humayun, Akbar ever saw themselves as Mongols.
No, not at
That's
all. And
incredible.
Aurangzeb saw himself as Durrani.
As a Durrani?
So yeah, so they were also
Durrani
woke
as in
enough.
an Afghan? He saw himself as an Afghan?
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
What?
So that's very
Yeah,
interesting
confused
that
लोग हैं यार. हाँ.
yeah, so they were ultra woke of that period. I recognize that. So there was a recognition in terms of race. आज मन
हाँ.
किया मैं ये race से हूँ आज. So and
Yeah.
coming back to Babur, there was some very interesting thing which I found. So earlier I used to get somewhere that in some very obnoxious portals you will read that the story of Babri, and
Hmm.
so I was like that. Of course, I have always been very rationalist and objective about my thing. I thought this is all hearsays. It cannot happen because
Yeah.
Babur is being idolized by so many pious Muslims too. So how can it be the case?
Yeah.
And I'll elaborate it because
Yeah,
people
yeah,
will not
yeah.
understand what I'm trying to say. So Babur has actually found a guy who is 12-year old, and he himself is quite younger, Babur, at that era, and it is in the period when his first marriage has happened with Aisha. And he writes in Babar Nama, he's dedicated a chapter as his first marriage. And just to clarify to people, this is not an autobiography of Babar Nama, but it's a diary writing. Diary is not equal to autobiography.
Okay.
Diary is something which is very personal to you. You don't wish to publish it.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
just write it. You never know that it will be read by many or not. So
Yeah.
yeah, Baba certainly won't have been knowing that in 2024 we are sitting
Everybody's
writing
gonna read it. Yeah.
annotated Babar Nama as what I have done, whatever, right?
Yeah.
No one have thought about it. So he wouldn't have thought about it. So he writes it that it's during the first marriage where I'm unattracted to my wife. The
Interesting.
the word is unattracted. Okay, he's not
Wow.
attracted to his wife, and I don't feel like going to her. But at the same time, he's saying that I have found a boy, a young lad called Babri in the Camp Bazaar of Kabul, and I'm so passionate about this guy, and I'm maddened in love of him. So
Wow.
at the one point, he's saying that I'm unattracted to my wife first,
Yeah.
and but I don't feel like going to her room or where she stays. But I am all in to talk to this guy. I am passionate. I am mad in love. He's not talking about love with his wife, but he's
Yeah.
talking love with this lad, right? He's written a lot of beautiful poems. So again, people may hate it, what I am gonna say, but he was a great poet.
Hmm.
Babur was a great poet. His poems are amazing,
Really?
and Yeah, his
Oh
poems are
wow.
amazing, and it really comes out because of the metaphors what he uses. The
Huh.
metaphors which he has used for Babri, and at many other instances, including when he lost his father, he has expressed the sorrow in a very beautiful way, and you can see the gradation because
Hmm.
he's writing a diary when he's 11-year old and he's lost his father. He wrote something that day, so the poem would have a certain level. What
Hmm.
is writing while we're talking about Babri, it would have certain level because the diary writing, he has not
Yeah.
decided after 50 years or say 40 some years when he dies that let's write an autobiography. He's
Yeah.
writing this
Yeah.
diary every day. So you see the change in the tone, change in the language, change in the metaphors, change in how he's perceiving everything, right? Because this is not something which was edited. This is how it was,
Yeah.
right? So you can see that passion in him and for Babri, and also yes, in that period too, any homosexual act or being bisexual was not certainly not seen in great light,
Right.
and which is evident from an instance which Babur had explained that once in Samarkand the revolt had happened because one of his cousin had began to see the sons of a very sons sons
Right.
of his higher of some higher official in the court. So
Wow.
that had pissed off a lot of Samarkandis and Tarkhanis, and they brought a big revolt in
Wow.
Samarkand for this. So this is happening. These all are recorded by Babur. So, and at the same time,
So
he is,
clearly, during his life, this was not public. During his life,
yeah,
nobody had access to his Babarnama, his diaries. So obviously, people did not know about this
yeah,
Babri person during his life.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and so people may see, and it's very interesting that when Babur got it translated, he had all the liberty to expunge out these pages, right?
Hmm.
He would have,
When
but those
Akbar got
pages,
it translated, you mean, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So then also these pages are not expunged; they remain in the Persian manuscript too.
Interesting.
So, so it gives you two, three ideas. A is that perhaps the elites always thought that we will dictate how the things is gonna be, even if it is a ban for the other sector of the people, or maybe that even I'm gonna write the punishment for other people or my subjects for this act. I will do it, or even my grandfather has done it, so it's an amazing thing. So let it be there. So you can see this duality, or rather the hypocrisy
Yeah.
among these people
I mean, it's so
from
funny that you say that because if you look at Indian, Muslim elites right now, or especially the Punjabi Muslim elites in Pakistan, it's the exact same thing. They will do all of the things, like they will live their lives basically as if they were living in a Western country. They'll drink, they'll
yeah,
party, they'll smoke, they'll do all of the things that are supposedly haram in their culture, right? They
yeah,
will do all of it, but the common Pakistani cannot do any of it. The common
yeah,
Pakistani will die. The common Pakistani will suffer the consequences if they do anything that the Punjabi elites are doing. So, I mean, that
yeah,
tradition is continuing to this day.
yeah. Because and the great precedent was set by the Qaeda Azam himself. So, so what to say? The founder itself was so the founding idea of the new Medina itself was like that. So we can't
Right.
help it.
Yeah.
So so founding ideas only build the building further, isn't it?
That's so
So
interesting.
yeah,
And
and
so
then
do you feel like, so then do you consider that the Babri Masjid that was constructed had something to do with its namesake?
so Babri is a very interesting phenomenon, and I'm gonna go in detail about it
Sure, go for it.
in the no, no, not
Oh,
today,
okay, okay.
in
In
the
another
sequel.
book.
Yeah, so that has got something which may not go well with a lot of people
Hmm.
because see, I am trying to stick to a lot of facts.
Hmm.
My whole objective is to do an objective work around all the emperors, and even if say that when you do an objective biography, many people may hate it, even that why I'm doing an objective biography on someone whom actually I personally hate. I have no love for Babur per se, right? Of course, I was moved reading his account about his father because the way he has expressed, and at the end of the day, I'm an artist and I'm connected to art, and I'm an emotional person too. It made me emotional while I was reading about it. But so whatsoever it may be, he is a villain to me.
Hmm.
Let me put it very bluntly and very clearly. But still, if I've chosen to do a biography of a villain, right, I just can't do the same thing what the Marxists had done. They did pick and choose.
Right.
The moment they shifted this gears from doing the economic history, as in trying to get in the religious angle, then where they try to paint Hindus always as the bad
Yeah.
and the Muslims as great guys. So I'm not gonna do the pick and choose
And you
business.
kill the longevity of your book as well. If you pick and choose material and publish it, sure, maybe you can sell it better on Twitter, like, look, Babar, evil person, बहुत खराब है,
Yeah,
सारे हिंदुत्ववादी आके मेरी किताब खरीदो. You can sell it for a few years, but 100 years from now, when you're not here, your book will still stand on its merit if it's produced objectively, and if it's presented objectively. It can
yeah.
survive for 100 years, 1,000 years. That's the great thing about objective lit or objective research.
Yeah, and objectivity actually gives a lot of substance.
Oh yeah.
It gives you credibility, and also it tells you that I'm not doing a job here for to promote certain pamphlets. I'm not here to circulate certain ideas to please somebody. I'm just trying to portray Babur as he was,
Yeah.
and so be it that yes, his acts, what he would do in Hindustan later on, would be quite not in the right taste. They
Right.
are problematic one, including the fact that he saw himself as, in fact I have included this in this part itself, that he saw himself as in the line of Ghazni and Gori.
Yeah.
So, and Ghazni and Gori saw themselves as idol breakers.
Yeah.
So idol breaker can certainly not be a hero, but even those part are gonna be part of the book. And when you really present 10 colors of somebody, so if two colors are very ugly, they will stand out. They will just be seen. You need
Mhm.
not then say that I will hide the four or five beautiful colors. No one is gonna care about it
Yeah.
because see, Babar, if comes to the personality to me, he's a chessboard king who did chessboard king, because I already explained that he certainly was a not a very powerful king that way, and he was not a good guy for Hindustan too. He was certainly an evil, right?
Right.
The way he for us, but still, when you are talking about his early foundational years, which is very important to know because that really tells you the base that why he followed Taimur as he did.
Right.
That actually tells you, then you are able to discriminate as well that when he is in Kabul, so he's killing people mercilessly there too, and he has made skull towers. The three or four instances where he has made skull tower of innocent Afghanis, even though they have come to surrender to him and we will give all you want. He
Wow.
he's writing diary. Imagine, and then he says that those people came to me and they surrendered and they put the weapons and all. But what I did next, I beheaded all of them. He's writing
Wow.
in a very
In
I
a very
beheaded all of
casual
them.
manner. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And each tower had some 200 heads. He's
My
mentioning
God.
it as well, right?
Right.
So this is the brutalness. While you can feel sympathy if you feel like for this guy who has lost his father, the same guy after just 2 decades comes to Kabul, slaughters the innocent people, and this time they are Muslims. So he's not using the word jihad. The moment he comes into
Hmm.
Hindustan,
He starts using
jihad, jihad,
jihad.
jihad. So you can make this distinction very clear. The guy knows very well that what when you are killing for jihad and when you are not killing for jihad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very
So, and
interesting.
coming back
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
Babri wala thing, so Babri Mosque has got some very different stories than what is there in the popular narrative, and so the instances will not make you believe, instances as in what exactly happened will not, and if it will not make you believe that it actually happened as we are thinking, but it certainly had some connection with Babur,
Right.
not with Babri, not with Babri actually. uh, but how it was connected, I will reveal it in the sequel, because
Okay.
this is something which needs a lot of nuanced pages, and it cannot be dealt in one or two sentences or some words. Otherwise, we all will be lynched together.
Yeah. it's it is interesting. Why do you feel like then that knowing all of these things about Babur, something that's available in public domain, something that's not really hidden, why do you feel like the Muslim community and Muslim scholars that at least tend to be very strict when it comes to the implementation of Islam in either their lives or in Indian public life particularly, why do you think Babur gets such a free pass, and why do you think Babur is lionized to this extent, knowing what we know about Babur?
So only the reason is that when Dehlevi was writing to a foreign ruler in the 18th century after the fall of Aurangzeb, he's saying that the Marathas and the Rajputs and the Jats are just so wicked people because they're destroying Islam.
Wow.
And with the fall of Mughal Empire or the empire of the Mongols, especially with the fall of Aurangzeb, the problem has begun.
Hmm.
And in fact, when Sir Syed Ahmad Khan also wrote a treatise explaining, not treaty, it was actually a pamphlet of
Okay.
50 odd pages criticizing the revolt of 1857 or battle of 1857, where he says that he's again seeing the Mughal Empire in a very steam light, and the he always says that empire the Hindustan always belongs to them, it
Hmm.
belong to them. So that is why the Muslims are the rightful uh, the royal bloods, or you
Right.
can say that the Muslims are the royal people. They are always supposed to rule, and
Hmm.
this Sir Syed Ahmad Khan is making it very clear, right, in his criticism of 1857 battle. So they always had this fascination for the Mughals or the Timurids, to be more precise,
Right.
and especially the founder will get a lot more credence because he's the one who brought it in, and most of the people are. So that's where my question goes to the people, that he followed something which will not go well through your throat because
Right.
he was a bisexual guy, he was a alcoholic too, right? He did most of the things which are un-Islamic
Yeah.
per se, which you will not permit it to happen. Today, you will support by the idea where a homosexual is supposed to be thrown from the terrace or whatnot. Maybe
Right.
that you will not come out to say it openly, but you will certainly
But it's
stand
certainly
against it.
not. It's certainly not condoned.
Yeah, and that's when it becomes more interesting because then you still idolize Babur,
Yeah.
and because then is it that his hatred for the Hindus or what he did to the Hindus later that supersedes each and
Yeah.
every un-Islamic deed is what he did, and that's where the problem comes, and that's where
Yes.
I pose the question to most of the people who want to idolize the people like Aurangzeb, Babur, or Shah Jahan, because Shah Jahan also has very interesting stories, and because I spoke about Shahjahan, so I I don't know if people are aware about the Taj story or not.
What is the story?
Because Taj, I say that it certainly cannot be seen as a symbol of love. Because,
Hmm.
but for me, it was always like that. At least a very beautiful monument.
Right.
And it would happen that whenever you go to Delhi for a childhood, in the childhood times for a vacation or something, it's a ritual that you are supposed to go to
Go to
Agra
Agra.
and
Yeah.
have a picture by through a Kodak camera, treated
Right.
as
Well, my
right.
wife,
This is a ritual.
my wife is from the US, so she'd never gone to India. So
Okay.
when we went to India for the first time, I brought her to India for the first time. We went to Delhi. Same thing with her. I have to go to Taj Mahal. We have to go see Taj Mahal. I'm like, Mataji, udhar to, udhar. Let's go see Rajasthan. Let's go see the all that beautiful architecture there. She's like, no, I have come to Delhi. I cannot go back to the US without seeing Taj Mahal. I'm like, chalo, let's go see Taj Mahal. So it's like a
So
rite of passage. If you have to come to Delhi, you go to Taj Mahal.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it has been a ritual for. But when I began to research, because I had primarily targeted to research about the whole empire, and I was looking in each and every guy. And the moment I looked the history of Taj, I was taken aback because Taj was commissioned. I am saying commissioned because few people believe that it was a structure existing already. I don't have evidences for it so far, but perhaps I will deal with it when I deal with Shah Jahan too.
Sure.
So, but structure was commissioned, and it was commissioned for a cost of 4.18 crore silver rupees.
Hmm.
Silver rupees or silver coins. Rupiah was the name of that coin. They used to call it rupiah, and that's the period. when Surat, Malwa, and Deccan, or Gujarat, Malwa, Deccan, are suffering from the worst of the famine. And that
Wow.
famine was also created by this guy Shah Jahan.
Wow.
But yeah, what had happened that the certain governors of these regions had revolted against Shah Jahan, and they had joined hands with Adil Shahi, who happened to be the enemies of the Mughals.
Mm.
These were the lands which were very fertile, and they had a amazing system of collecting revenue. That if your land is fertile, it gives more. You take more revenue, more
Mm-hmm.
percentage. So they drew around 53% from Malwa and so on and on.
Mm.
So now Malwa is gone from his hand, right? He's not drawing enough revenue. So he thinks that if it's not gonna be with me, not for anybody. So Lahori, who is the biographer of Shah Jahan, says that the regal army or the royal army was sent and they destroyed crops. And of
Wow.
course, when the horses pass over the earth where
Yeah.
you used to grow the crops, the land also becomes a bit barren. Not for
Yeah.
very long, but for the time being, temporarily. It's just the nature of the soil changes. And coupled with the lack of rain, we got a famine, which was disastrous. 7.4 million people died.
In that famine, 7.4
Yeah,
million people.
yeah. And this number is twice the number of how many died in the Bengal famine of
Yeah, yeah.
1943,
That's
for which we
insane.
call Churchill the genocide maker.
Yeah, yeah.
So if Churchill is a genocide doer, what is this guy Shah Jahan?
Seven and
And
a
this
half
number
million
is,
people. Holy
yeah.
shit.
So the population is also lesser that time proportionately.
Yeah.
1943 population relatively larger. So proportionality, if you try to do some pro rata basis calculation or something, so almost 5 times more people died in that famine, right?
Yeah.
Done by a guy whom you praise for giving the monument of love. But that also was not a love, because we know that how Mumtaz died. She had a terrible life with this man.
Oh yeah. What was it? 18th child or some nonsense like that?
Yeah, yeah. 17. I missed the number right now, but it was number more than 15 for sure.
यार गाय के इतने बछड़े
So,
नहीं होते जितना इनके बच्चे हुए हैं.
so that's you. You just imagine, and you are calling that the structure of the love and
Yeah.
whatnot. And these are the same people who will raise question on the character of Sri Ram. They will raise,
Yeah.
yeah, the same people who
Yeah.
are gonna praise Shah Jahan for it. The same people who would
Yeah.
call the name to Winston Churchill because he was a capitalist, right? Marxists have a lot
Yeah.
of anti-Churchill literature, but they will not have raised a. So this guy gave us one of the worst famine.
Yeah.
The
That's
structure
incredible.
was built by the blood of the Indians,
Yeah.
right? The taxes were collected by them, and the famine was so ugly. Sham, if I tell you the eyewitness record, they say that the people were eating from the excreta of the dead.
Wow.
The people sold their children as a slave so that at least they can survive.
And eat something.
People
Yeah.
were trading between goat meat and the dog meat.
Yeah.
So
While
and these are
while
all
this guy was building Taj Mahal, right?
while this and by further extorting more and more money,
More and more
and
money. Yeah.
and the artisans were Indians. So artisans Bharat ke bhaiya, the money is of Indians, the blood of Indians, and so of course it's not the structure of love, but it's all of Indians. So at
Yeah.
times when people say that Taj leke chale jayenge and all those rhetorics, the blood just boils, because it reminds me of that what had happened.
Yeah.
I have read the whole text and I was in tears when I was reading about it. The feminist so troubling,
Yeah.
and so be it. But here we have Shah
That's
Jahan as
incredible. Well, I
yeah,
hope I hope that you continue with the series. I hope that after Babar you work on you complete your plan of working on every single of these rulers, because there are I, I knew that during Mughal times there were famines. I didn't know the famine was this severe. Well, I knew that the famine was severe, but I didn't know that the number was this big. Because we all think of like, okay, Churchill ka jo famine tha was like 4 million people, was such a huge number. What a massive genocide. And this is almost double that number, which is insane to
yeah.
me. It's absolutely
I
blows
would
my
say
mind that
it's
it was double that number.
I would say it's 5 times, because pro
Holy
rata basis,
shit,
if we
man.
calculate based on, yeah,
Yeah.
because population was lesser.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, true.
So it was so devastating in terms
That's
of proportion.
insane. Yeah, I hope you continue to do this work. I'm looking forward to finishing the book currently, The Chessboard King. I've enjoyed what I've read so far. I'm looking forward to finishing it. And where can people go buy your book? Do you have it available on Amazon, right?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon. If people want to buy overseas, can be purchased from Garuda. Garuda
Garuda.
has
Okay.
made it available. Yeah,
Okay. Perfect. Are you thinking of releasing like a um, ebook for it, like a Kindle book for it as well?
yeah. Kindle is available now.
Kindle is available. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, great. And any plans for an audiobook anytime soon?
let's see if this version does good. I'm sure that the people will publisher will push for it.
Okay.
It all depends on the market.
Yeah, that's true. I would recommend people checking it out. I've really enjoyed what I've read so far. So please, guys, if you get a chance, please check out the book. The link is available in the description. I would really love if Abhas is able to complete his series on all Mughal rulers. So please support this one so he has the incentive to continue writing these books. But Abhas, it was a pleasure talking to you, man. This was fun, and I hope that I'm able to have you back to discuss, your future projects as well. Because I've enjoyed your Twitter threads. I don't know if I've said this before, but I came across you first, related to that Twitter thread about Khilji and Hindu fanatics destroying Nalanda. That's how I first came across you. And since then, I've read a lot of your other Twitter threads, and they've all been very educational to me personally, and I'm sure to a lot of people, on social media as well. So please continue the great work, and congratulations on the current book.
Thanks a lot, Sam. It was really pleasure being on your show, and I'm really thankful for the so many kind words which you showered. I don't know whether I deserve this or not, but really thank you.
No, no, no. It's absolutely deserved. I think we need more people again who are able to do a objective dissection of history, because I feel like for a lot of evil people and evil deeds to get exposed, all it needs is sunlight. It doesn't need sanitizer. It doesn't need to be edited or twisted in any way. I think just shining some light upon it will do the trick. And I think that is what you're doing. And that is what somebody like a Vikram Sampath is doing. He's not putting his own twist on it. He's just exposing the facts as they are. And that is enough to change people's minds. And that is enough to educate people. So please keep on with it. And guys, again, if you like today's show, like, share, subscribe. Please check out Abbas's book. Um, because as I said, I would really like him to continue making this series. So please check it out. Support Indian authors who are doing such great work in the historical field, because there is something that really does, the record on Indian history does need to be corrected. So please support people that are doing so. Abbas, thanks again for joining me, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to talk to me as well. This was a lot of fun.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. We'll see you for the next one. And until then, stay healthy, stay happy. And to all of you, a secular pranam.